We're going live. Creating live, creating live. Are we live?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are we live?
This is so, I think so. It says live over your face.
Hello, everybody. I have, oh, good. And then we can get live comments. All right. Thanks, everybody, for your patience while I, you know, I was a post-production supervisor back in my day, and you'd think I'd be a little bit more on this, but it has been 18 years. And I did go corporate those last couple of years, which means, you know, I was just busy organizing. All right. So here we are, and we've got Carolyn in the corporate stooge, right? We've got Carolyn Bender with us, our board advisor here for Hopewell Valley Single Parents. We got a dinging going on. Who's dinging?
I got
it. Today it is our esteemed honor to welcome the present day Board of Education President for Hopewell Valley Regional School District. Okay, I am going to introduce Deborah. So our group is a sustainable network of single parents who support each other and share resources and just hang when we can for coffee and whatnot. So I have here from the Central Jersey .com, Linthorst, a resident of Hopewell Township for 21 years, is currently a stay-at-home parent and community volunteer. She and her husband, Tom, an attorney, have raised four children, mom of four people, here in the Hopewell Valley. And they introduce your wonderful children. My son is in the same grade as your middle child, your sophomore. Linthorst, who is seeking re-election here in the Hopewell Valley Regional School District Board, has worked as, and I see this, Deborah, as a trifecta. Okay, you have worked as a lobbyist and legislative analyst in Washington, D.C., meaning you know government, and as a financial analyst, meaning you understand budgets and money, and then executive assistant for 20th Century Fox in Los Angeles and New York, and meaning you know how to deal with crazy people. Oh, did I just say that? All right, so you're currently in your final year of your first term on the Board of Ed, and you have served as board president for the past 2 years. So welcome, hello. And after this introduction, if you want to just tell us what you're about and, you know, what is it that we will be asking, certainly Carolyn will, about single parents and what you think you can do for us. And since we're a new group, we're still trying to figure out what to ask. But anyhow, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Carolyn. I really appreciate your time this morning, your effort, especially given all the technological snafus. So thanks to everyone for being here. You know, first and foremost, I want to say how privileged I feel to be with you guys and also to represent Hopewell Township on the board now for these 3 years. And I'm looking for the opportunity to have another 3 to do the important work of this district and this board. You kind of summed it all up in the intro, but I do think that I bring a unique skill set to this job. In addition to my professional experiences, I am extremely familiar with this district. I have volunteered in this district since about 2005 in many capacities, including as a PTO president for 2 of the 6 schools. I've served on the district's future planning committee in the year 2014. And of course, during my time on the board now, I have served as president for the last 2 years. And in that capacity, I've been involved with all decision-making affecting the district throughout. And I think that my work has been pivotal to enabling our staff and students to get back to school in a safe and effective manner. And I'd like to kind of see us through this. I'd like to see us through to the end of this pandemic and have some continuity there. And really to get back to kind of some of the visionary stuff of this district. Not that any of those efforts have halted, but I'd love to be able to concentrate more of our energies upon that. And, you know, I think that during my time on the board, one of the most important things that I have worked on is increasing communication, having more effective communication and transparency. And that's been evidenced in a number of ways. We have a bi-monthly, I guess, insert in the Hopewell Express now that goes out free to all families to try to update everyone on all of the things that the district is doing. We've had different groups organized so that folks can come out and be a part of the process. Of course, in my time here, we've now searched for and appointed a new superintendent, which I think is, you know, fantastic. And we're also thrilled to have Dr. Therese leading the charge. And, you know, again, I'd like to be here to kind of help her through in her first year. This is kind of an interesting time to come in as a new superintendent, but she is strong and capable, and I'm so thrilled to have her with us. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of where I am. I also would like to mention too that as board president, I represent our district on a more broad level as well through the New Jersey School Board Association. I serve on the legislative committee for all legislation that comes down in the state about about school boards. And I am the one of two representatives for all of Mercer County in that regard. So I'm the alternate member. So, you know, I'm looking out for our district. I'm representing our district in broader ways. And I'm looking out for a lot of our local school boards as well, our neighbors and friends. So again, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, back to Dr. Therese, who is our new superintendent of schools. We had the opportunity to meet with her. She met our group last spring. We were doing a kind of a rollout of guest interviews, and she joined us for the Nurtured Heart approach. We spoke about that. So we did have a chance to have a meet and greet, our group did, with her then. And she's fully supportive of our single parent group. And, you know, because we're not all in lockdown as we were when Dr. Smith appointed a counselor to us, we're just switching things up. And we're rolling out with a new counselor of schools as well this year. And so it should be actually an exciting year for us because we're more boots on the ground. We're working on outreach, hence this conversation with you today and the other candidates. And so thank you for joining us. So let's now, Carolyn, my goodness, I like my phone is loaded. I can't hold the phone up with all the questions. Now, Carolyn, with all of your questions, is there one in particular you wanted to start with? And of course, anything single parent related, which Carolyn, as a former, and I guess, you know, our mantra, by the way, Debbie, is once a single parent, always a single parent, because you deal with the dynamic of new family members and whatnot in perpetuity. You just do. Sure. Anyhow, Carolyn, shoot, you want to start? And you're muted. Mute, unmute, Carolyn.
No, I mean, I have the privilege of knowing Deb long before she came to the school board. She is her own force and super lovely and well-versed and all of those things that we hope for a school board member to do. You know, I do have the unusual background of having been a single parent for 15 years prior to coming to Hopewell Valley. So yeah, you know, once scarred, always scarred with all of those issues that we deal with as single parents. But yeah, I think, you know, and you're right, I sent a series of questions out to Carolyn earlier today, you know, for all of the board members, some of them more specific to others. I mean, Deb, you're got feet on the ground, you know, boots on the ground with the board now. But I think, you know, there are issues that are specific to single parents that I think are global. And, you know, just recently we had the high school early dismissal because we had an issue, a police issue there. You know, and there is a concern about what happens when we dismiss to home and you don't have a parent at home. How are we addressing that globally in our district from, you know, K up?
Right. And that's a very good question. I think that, you know, if I could touch upon that incident just for a moment, and I know Dr. Therese has spoken to this and others. You know, our district is very well prepared in the event of these unfortunate activities. And, you know, we were able to evacuate those students and staff safely and get them across to Timberlane. Obviously, we're in the midst of a pandemic, so it was a little more challenging than it would normally be. Thank goodness it was a nice day. But, you know, we learned a lot that day. We learned a lot about how we might better communicate with our local police force, and how we might communicate out to the community, and so forth. And we have a lot of takeaways. We've done already one debriefing as a board with the administration. We'll be doing others. And one of the things that we'll be talking about specifically are those evacuation, you know, those points of evacuation, what you do then when it's time to dismiss. You know, I would think that in the future, we wouldn't have that type of situation, because it was something that we were trying to match up students in a field to bus routes and that type of thing. And we were having difficulty getting buses in because the investigation was still going on. Right. But I would hope that by the time the first message would go out, most parents would have ample notice that they could either be home themselves or get, you know, a surrogate in their place to be home. Certainly if a child is sick during the school day and needs to be picked up, everyone has an emergency backup. I would think that, you know, as a next level of contact, we would be able to go to those emergency contacts. But in an emergency, as you know, because I know you've been around first responders throughout your life, Carolyn, you do the best that you can. And you know, you put your parameters in place, and you let it go. But certainly I can't imagine that we would let any child be dismissed without knowing that, you know, they would have somewhere to go that was safe and someone that would be there for them at home. But those are things that we're looking at.
I must say the YMCA is pretty heavy-handed too about that. They met with us last year, and so they were very impressive about how they field kids when, you know, there's difficulty. And, you know, I'm going to shift a little bit, because we were talking about busing, and this is always a question. And, you know, frankly, our issues tend to parallel and reflect what working parent issues are. And the late bus is always, you know, on the front and center of everybody's mind. Carolyn wrote that down. We're always asked about that. Late buses.
Of course. And that is something, you know, I wanted to point out, we have, in my time on the board and prior, we have had quite a few single parent board members. So they are sensitive to the needs of single parents and understand them. And one of those former board members was one of the driving forces behind getting those late buses reinstated most recently, when we had them prior to the pandemic, and was adamant that we have them, and received full board support for that. We all know it's a win-win. Not only does it help our single parents and their children, it helps the economically disadvantaged who maybe won't be able to leave work and pick up a child. Those kids are then allowed to participate, or permitted to participate in those after school activities, or to get extra help, or whatever it may be. And so we understand how essential those buses are. As you know, we're living through times right now with a really horrible bus driver shortage.
Well, yeah, that was my next. I was going to tie into that too. Yeah. It looks like you're paying more per hour.
We are. So the board just approved that at, I believe, our last meeting. I don't think it was 2 months ago. We did raise their hourly rate. We've also offered additional benefits to entice them, such as helping them to get their CDL licensing and so forth, helping them through those background checks and the things that they need to do, helping to pay for some of that.
That's awesome.
Yes, and we now are comparable to, or even higher than we're paying higher than everyone else, I believe, in the county at this point. So we're hoping to retain our current drivers and let them know how much we appreciate what they do, and maybe also to bring back some others who we've lost recently.
You know, prior to the pandemic, this is how I met Dr. Smith, Thomas Smith, former superintendent of schools. I called him in the winter of 2020 because the bus was so unreliable. And I just said, you know, as a single parent, I need to know my son is on that bus. I can't leave for work knowing he's stuck home, or, you know, what are we going to do about this? You know, and, you know, the man who answers his own phone, the first thing he said to me is he thanked me for mentioning how I was a single parent, because he grew up in a single parent household. And then Matt released and unleashed a whole new set of circumstances, including this group, because he assigned a counselor for us. And he even joined us as a guest himself last spring and shared that experience. But that is a huge deal now, having more money, and just to kind of underscore, to get the best drivers that we can. And, you know, single parents, it's really hard to afford to live in Hopewell Valley. That being said, but those buses need to run on time and get safely to the school and back home again, because we don't necessarily always have somebody there. And my child, now that he's 15, he doesn't need anybody here in the house, but I still want to know he's getting home safely, because he's still vulnerable. He's, you know, so this is a very key topic. So,
well, and I'm glad that you mentioned about Dr. Smith, because he really was, I think it's fair to say, the driving force behind helping your group to get started, and is very sensitive to those issues, having grown up in a single parent household. And I can tell you that, excuse me, his concerns for all families, but, you know, as well as specifically for single parent households and working parents, was really on view during the pandemic. And during the process where we had our return to school committee that met with all the principals in the district to kind of brainstorm and bring everybody back. And I was able, as president, to participate in all of those meetings. And I can tell you that, you know, Dr. Smith was the driving force behind setting up those remote learning centers that we had at the schools to bring in the children of working parents and of single parents, and really of anyone who needed it. So that the kids could be there and learn at school during the pandemic as they needed to, and for staff members as well. He was looking out for the needs of the staff members as well, and having childcare in place for them.
We have teachers in our group. We do, you know.
Absolutely.
They'll touch base.
But that's just one example. I mean, we were always looking out, you know, for the needs of parents who needed those extra supports.
So really quick, Deb. So I know, I think it's wonderful that we're starting to really show some financial appreciation for our bus drivers. I mean, they're the most lovely people, and we entrust our children to them. And I can't tell you in my last, you know, 10 years, how many faces I've seen, and the relationships, really, they look for your kids look for them. It's all fabulous. But can you talk a little bit about our parish shortage and the limited wages they're receiving, as well as our substitute teacher shortage as well, and what we're doing to kind of come on par with other districts in our area as far as financial support?
Thank you for that question. So of course, it's a little bit of a different situation, because the bus drivers are not unionized, at least in an organized fashion in our district, whereas the paraprofessionals are. And so that's something where, you know, we're going to have conversations with their association. And I know that the administrators do have those conversations. They're ongoing. But as you know, this is, you know, in the pandemic, this is a problem for all districts. And I think we've done pretty well. I mean, I was talking to a couple of the administrators about this just this week, and they were saying how we have hired 80 new staff members within the last month or two. I mean, it's insane, the work that human relations department has been doing, and Tana Smith has been doing. And, you know, I think that we're at a place now where, you know, we're in good shape compared to other districts. And I think it's also fair to say that a lot of these folks are not just holding places. They're skilled, they're qualified. And for those who haven't been, to be quite blunt, there have been one or two, we've said, just don't think you're cut out for this. Sorry, you know, because we do still have a certain standard here in Hopewell, and we're going to maintain that throughout. But I do think, you know, I've also seen a few substitutes come in recently, new hires. So we continue to work on that. And Tana Smith, again, another force. She is phenomenal and is working day and night to make sure that we're fully staffed with quality professionals.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest discussion that I hear when I talk to my paras is compensation, or when I hear that they're still actively looking. It's when we start looking at districts, adjacent to us, there seems to be a little bit of a
Yes,
disparity.
I know that's a concern. I can't specifically go into the details on it because it's associations and negotiations and so forth, but I
Yeah.
can tell you that it is on our radar. The board is aware of it, and when we go in to negotiate in a general sense with any group, we do look at where they rank within the county and within the
Right.
state. That's all part of the consideration, and I'm sure it will be during this round as well.
I'd like to just inject that our group is strictly a group. We are not any 501c3 formalized. And that's kind of my disclaimer, just to say we're not endorsing anybody. We're here to learn. And so thank you for that.
Sure.
I want to keep moving because we have 1,200 more questions to ask you.
Okay. Let's go.
Here's a good one. Here's a good one from Carolyn. What do you think the #1 challenge is for our student body across Hopewell Valley? Kind of tying in with everything.
I am here to tell you that my biggest concern and the thing that keeps me up at night is our mental health and social emotional learning. There are things that we have all kinds of pots, on the stove, and we're always looking to all of them and tending to all of them, but that is the one right now in my mind. And I think many would agree with me on the board. And in that regard, again, you mentioned Mr. DeStefano has come in. I think he's going to be fabulous, and is going to put, the health of our students and staff forefront at all times, and has some great ideas in that regard. And the board works with him very closely, through our education committee. But one of my initiatives for at least the past 6 months or so, maybe a year now, is we are going to create a new board standing committee just dedicated to SEL and mental health. So we have 5 standing committees right now. This will be our 6th. And we're going to spend the next couple of months getting that prepared. But that will allow the board to have a more keen focus upon these issues and to work more closely with the administrators. It's stuff that we've always looked at, but to me, it doesn't belong in the education program committee. It needs its own concentration and focus. And with that, we're going to look at the board district goals. One of our goals is promoting SEL and mental health. And we have a lot of objectives under that to achieve. And they're steep, but they're achievable. We're creating new counseling groups where students can be in groups and kind of even lead those groups to a certain extent. We've brought in the services of Rutgers Behavioral Health this year, which is a new thing during the pandemic. And we'll have a dedicated counselor that our staff and students can lean upon. We're looking to highlight things that already exist in our offerings to our staff, to let them know what's out there, to support them in these times, and to encourage them to use those supports, utilize them. And honestly, it's just going to be more about check-ins and getting to know where staff and students are. I don't know what you've been seeing. I know here in my own household, here in the community, everyone says, well, the kids are thrilled, and the staff for the most part, to be back. And I think that's true. But I also think that for all of us, this pandemic is going to have a delayed effect. We're still seeing the repercussions of this, and we're going to continue seeing it for some time now. And I don't know about you, but I want to do everything we possibly can to be well positioned for that and to keep an eye to that. And so I think the things that the district has put into place are going to enable that to happen. And I think that, for anyone who has specific needs or concerns, they need to know where to reach out. I think most people do, but I think we need to remind them. And I think that's what you're going to see come out of this new committee, or kind of some new tools to utilize and new things to make this more accessible for people.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Deb. I would love to see the counseling, especially in our middle school, where I think the kids really start to struggle emotionally.
Yes.
Those 7th grade girls, that's still the hardest year that I see. boys I'm seeing, they're struggling 7th, 8th grade, you know. But yeah, to be able to make it more accessible and more acceptable for them to come forth and talk about things that are concerning to them or upsetting to them. You know, the dynamics at that age are really hard. And, you know, parents at home, you know, our kids still think we're the stupidest thing on the face of the earth, you know. So it's nice to have somebody that doesn't have skin in the game, you know, for them to go to during the school day, that's accessible. Or even, you know, honestly, as I'm sitting here thinking, before or after school, you know, because so many of our kids here in the Valley are so much have their eye on the prize, you know, the most AP classes and the most
Yes.
sports and the most clubs, you know, and that comes at a cost. It just does.
It does.
You know, some of our parents are very focused on making sure their kids get into the best colleges and the most rigorous without sometimes considering the repercussions for that.
Yes.
You know.
And I'm glad you brought that. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm glad you brought that up because honestly, that is something that we've been talking about as a board and since Dr. Therese has come on quite a bit is this idea of the pressure that our students are under to achieve and to be, you know, and this is a high performing district and we're glad for that and it will continue to be. But we need to really look at the idea of balance, particularly with this pandemic and the stressors that are on our kids. You know, something that I'm going to continue to say again and again is, and another thing I'm pushing this year is to kind of re-examine our mission statement. It's been a while since it's been done. But one of the things that jumped out to me was when you look at our mission statement, the word safe doesn't appear until well down towards the bottom. And we know that if our kids don't feel safe and our staff doesn't feel safe in our schools, no one is going to be productive and no one is going to learn in the way that they should. And safe could be from the perspective of equity and feeling accepted and appreciated for who you are and where you are. And safe can be a physical thing where you feel safe in the building or don't feel safe in the building and many other things. And so that's something we're going to look at in that SEL committee as well. And as a board on the whole in all of our committees. But I think we need to get back to thinking about what does a student who is prepared for this world, you know, this global marketplace and all of that we live in, what does it mean to be well balanced? You know, is it just about taking those higher level courses and taking as many of them as you can? Or as you're saying, you know, do we look at our students and say, hey, it's great if you can get into an Ivy League school, but once you get there, how are you going to do? Because we've seen a number of kids go off just to leave and you know, change course or come back home or whatever it may be because the stressors are just too much. And so that's something I know that's on Mr. DeStefano's radar. You know, it's something that we're all going to be looking to as well as part of this SEL committee. And finally, I would say this, having an 8th grade daughter at home, I completely understand what you're talking about. And last night happened to be a night in our household where we dealt with a lot of girl drama. Who's going to pink out? Who's going with who? And this is something that I'm more concerned about than ever, not because it affects me personally, but because these kids were either remote or hybrid last year. It changed up all their friend groups. As you said, that middle school is a sensitive place. You know, it's a sensitive age is what I should say. Yeah. And I wondered how they would all come back together. Would the friendships look the same? You know, it shook up that entire dynamic. Would their social interactions be the same? They're all kind of learning to be back together again. So these are all things that we need to be acutely aware of as we move through this year.
You know, one of the other things that's come to my attention as a result of having older kids, I mean, my oldest graduated back in 2007. I had an 11, then a 17, and then just recently, you know, 2021 through the pandemic, where I think her senior year, she spent 10 days in school the entire year. So that it definitely changed how they moved through to college and what that looked like. But one of my concerns across the Valley, having older kids, is seeing how many kids that are leaving our high school are really struggling, and they don't have resource at home or within an area that they feel safe to come back to. one of the things that I've talked about for years potentially is maybe offering some kind of resource to our graduates. So if they are really struggling, that we have a place that's safe for them to call back to and say, listen, I'm in a place, I don't have parent support, or I don't have this or that. And just being able to, even if it's just an ear and a referral.
Yes.
So there is an opportunity. There was a student, frankly, that was in our top 10 in the last couple of years, top 10 students, academics, sports, the whole nine. He went off to college and ended up living in his car with no money.
Yeah.
He felt unsafe in his dorm because of his roommate. He had no financial backing because his parents were both ill and struggling, and there was no place for him to go.
Right.
He came across my family by accident, completely by accident. And it really pains me, and like most mothers of graduates at this point, we see that we are losing students, mid-20s, late 20s, overdosing,
Yes.
suicides. It's painful to watch, and it would be nice if our district had some kind of resource for those kids moving forward.
I would agree with you, and I think that's something that we should look to formalize. I will say, I think that's something that needs to be part of a broader effort that involves other community partners and can't just be the responsibility of the district. One of the things that I truly love about being in this district and being on this board are our collaborative relationships here in our community. At one point, one example of that is the Hopewell Valley Mobile Food Pantry that sprung up during the pandemic, which involved the 3 local mayors and the district and the Y and other, essential groups here in our community coming together to support the need that exists. And I know the need you were just speaking of was for one particular student, but certainly, there's a household where people might think, oh, this is an affluent community, we don't have that. This food pantry is serving anywhere from 80 to 100 families a week. The need is here. The need is great, and it will continue to be after this pandemic is gone. So
that's what we need to see. I mean, what we want to do is to help those people and to come out of hiding, as Christine Abrams had once said with students. We feel that way with the parents. Don't duck and cover. It's okay. We want to just strip any stigma, just shred it. That they're, that problem children or problem households are strictly single parents or whatever it is. So that's actually on par with what we're looking to do, is get people out, get people engaged, and so they feel safe, so they know where to go. And I was going to go then back to the mobile food pantry. You guys had said that there was this Hopewell, not stubbornness, but a Hopewell pride. And that I totally tapped into that because I realized, oh my gosh, that there's a little bit of that going on with the single parents too. This, I've got it. I don't need any help. I don't need support. And that's okay. You don't have to, but we just want people to know, to be able to catch people when we can, to support them in our small little community.
Absolutely.
So we're now about 45 minutes after the hour. And Carolyn asked this question, and it's kind of our point question in surveys and whatnot. What can single parents do to help you? What can we do as we're learning through this and wading through and getting our outreach going? How can we support the Board of Ed?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, the biggest thing is just to keep the lines of communication open. We have a board email address, and I'll probably get this wrong, HVBOE at hvrsd.org, I believe it is. I should share it. Oh,
I'll do it right now.
Is there a chat here? Is there a chat?
Yeah, HVR. Wait, what is it?
Sure
HVBOE?
Let me make sure. It's HVBOE at hvrsd.org, but I just want to confirm that's
HVB it. Board of Ed.
Yeah.
All right, is that it? I just put it in our live.
Yeah, I'll check that.
Everybody don't all jump at once to ask questions.
But seriously.
Wake up.
Seriously, we really do try to answer each and every question that comes in. And beyond that, we use it as a resource to kind of catalog all the concerns that come in by topic. And then as a board, we kind of review those. But we're open to ideas and input and ways that, there's 2 or 3 ideas that have just come out of this conversation alone. And I think conversation is the most important thing for sure. And communicating to us about your students, kind of just letting us know where they are, making sure that their needs are being met. And if they're not, letting us know how we can meet them. Now, of course, if you're emailing the board on specific student concerns, we will then go to, your building administrators, your teachers, and so forth. We'll follow that chain of command. But, you could write a letter to your child's teacher when they're struggling, and you could copy us on it if you think it's something that might affect others or might, impact a larger group, because those are the kind of trends that we're looking, to examine. Beyond that, I would just say, be a part of the process in any way you can. Join, be involved with your PTOs, because they're the boots on the ground in every school.
So that we did just join the district parent council, which we just didn't have the capacity to do last year.
Yes.
One of the biggest holdups, like any working parent, is we can't get to them.
Yeah.
And Zoom has really been awesome for single parents because we don't have to pay for childcare and do the whole rigmarole of getting all children in the car and whatever we need to do. So yes. So, okay, I'm going to have to say thank you, and we can reach out to you at HVBOE, or I'm asking anybody if they have questions.
Yeah.
And with your permission, I would love to post this also on our YouTube channel, because we're just such movers and shakers here at the Single Parents Group. Hopefully, if anybody has questions, and I will share that with you too, that post, we can carry on the conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Of course, I'm checking
and
his
hopefully,
email.
parents, this all makes us feel a little better that we are asking our candidates questions and, and see how everything applies for us. Carolyn,
Yes.
I got to thank you again. You're awesome. Lots of questions. Carolyn obviously knows what to ask.
I will say I should know our email address by heart, but I'm not 100% sure I gave it to you correctly, but it is front and center on the district website. So
on the district site.
Yeah,
and, and don't worry, I can always post it again.
I don't know why, of course, I didn't have it handy, but, we're always able to, and of course, now that we're in person, please, feel free to come and make public comment as well.
Yes.
In any of the meetings that you're able to come. But we're always reachable by that email address with any concerns that you might have.
That's, I've never actually attended a Board of Ed meeting. So I'm allowed to.
You are.
We actually had our nighttime single parent groups running at the same time.
Right.
So we were your competitor.
Sometimes there's scheduling conflicts, but we do live stream the meetings. They are recorded. You can go back and watch them. They're posted on the website, usually within 24. I'm sorry. The link is probably on the website, but they're on the district's YouTube channel. You can go back and watch them anytime you like. And again, reach out with concerns. And I will say, we do appreciate your emails and your comments in person. But the emails are really the best way to get us, because again, that's where we can chart trends and respond to people all at once. And it's just more efficient that way for everyone. And usually we get our answers out a lot more quickly that way. So,
Deborah, what a delight to meet you and have a nice, easygoing chat.
Thank you for the opportunity. Please reach out anytime with any questions. And thanks for all that you do within our community. Thanks for supporting our single parents and for supporting each other and upholding each other. And, it's just been amazing to watch the progression of this group. What a great service.
It's kind of cool. It's scary too.
Yeah. Well, keep going.
We'll see. All right. Thanks, everybody. And our next candidate will be lining up in a few minutes. So we'll be starting all over again shortly.
Okay.
Debbie,
Have a
wonderful.
Great day,
Is it okay to call you Debbie?
Great to see you. Absolutely. I go by Debbie. Absolutely.
All right. Bye, gang.
Thanks, Carolyn's. Take care.
Sure.
Good day.